my name's Cindy, and I'm with Phil's Sewing Virtual Club. And today we're going to go over some hints and tips in making the KimberBell Whimsy Winter Bench Pillow. This is right here. We're going to use, we're going to make our own pom-poms, and we're going to go over some decorative stitches and some options for appliquing on the pillow, some quilting, and then putting it together, and we're going to show you some tools that we use to make the job a little bit easier. So the first suggestion I have is you get, with the pattern pieces for applique that you need to trace onto. 725 heavy duty Wonder Under is what I used, and I found that worked really well. And then what I did is it took it to my printer and I made a copy. And I made a copy for each individual piece, because with the one they send you, it has two sides on one of them, and it's a little bit harder to trace. So I just printed out and then identified what I'm going to use. This is the snowman hat, and I put number 1 blue. Here is the penguin hat, and that's going to be beige. So we're only going to have one penguin hat, but this is number 1 because we're going to have 2 snowmen. So I went ahead and identified, here's the number 2 red snowman hat, and I put an X here because we don't need the penguin hat, and so on and so on. And so I needed 2 noses, so I created number 1 nose, and then the snowman head, this is number 1, and then here's the cuff for the blue hat. So that seemed to keep me organized in tracing out all of my pieces onto the Wonder Under heavy duty. So that's 725. And then what I did is I gathered the fabrics that I wanted. Well, I actually did it prior to that. That's why it says number 1 blue. But what you'll do is you'll gather some fabrics that are large enough. They don't have to be really large, but you'll gather fabrics that you find would work best for your project. And then you also have to cut a background piece. And so I cut the background piece, and then the edges for the background for the sides. Cut that out, and then the 2 back pillow pieces. So everything's cut as far as my pieces. And then you're going to cut 4-inch squares, and we're going to make snowballs. That's this part right here, the snowball. And then it's going to alternate a 4-inch square with a snowball. And I did find, using my 4.5-inch square ruler, made that job a little bit easier. This is an Omnigrid, and it made that job making those 4-inch squares pretty precise. Then when I stitched the snowball, the 1.5-inch squares, and stitched edge to edge, I found that the Omnigrid little 6-inch ruler, about 6-inch by 1-inch, is really handy in lining up your 1/4-inch seam allowance to trim off your edge. And then you press this up, and then you've got your snowball. So what we're going to do now is we're going to give you some options too. Here's Diane took the penguin applique and made this adorable little placemat, and you could switch that around. And of course you don't want to have a pom-pom sitting on your table, so she came up with the idea of putting maybe a button there, or you could basically leave it how it is, and then you just stitch around it and turn it, and you can make snowmen, you can mix it up, you can make ball penguins, it's your option. But it's a nice twist on how to use these applique patterns for other projects. So let's go to the sewing machine and we're going to go over some tips and tricks there. Okay, now at my sewing machine, I have my little rotary cutter mat and pressing mat, and here is my 1x6" ruler, and it's got the 1/4 inch marks that makes this easy to line up. Now I use my 1/4 inch foot and I stitch from the corner here to the corner here, and follow the manufacturer's instructions. She gives great instructions for this KimberBell project. And I'm going to just line up my 1/4 inch with the seam, the stitching line, and look at that, it makes it perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance on. And then the next thing we'll do is we'll press this up. I'm just going to finger press it right now. You'll press that up, and then that's what makes your snowball square. Okay, then after we make our snowball squares, we're going to alternate and stitch. And if you've got something that's directional like this, you want to make sure that you have it in the correct direction. This actually has a direction too, and I wanted this to go horizontal and this to go vertical. So I'm going to place my right sides together, because we're going to have one background piece and then one snowball piece. And then you're going to stitch a 1/4 inch seam allowance, flip, and just then we're going to, you know, add the next one, and so on and so on. And the manufacturer does a great job in explaining that too. So you're going to, at the end, you're going to come up with this piece here, which it fits the bottom and the top of the background piece. So here's our 1/4 inch seam allowances, and I press them to the solid piece. So we've got that done. So, and then the instructions say also, we talked about fusing the piece from the heavy duty one to under, and I just cut this out, and I'm sure you know how to do that. I pressed it onto my fabric on the wrong side, and then I cut around it. So then this is the front piece of the nose, and I just peel this off, and then I can press this on my project, on the background piece, that you know, when I'm auditioning, where I want every piece to go. So you could, you know, set your background piece up, and I'll show you a little demonstration here, that you audition, and you want to make sure that when you layer, you want to put the head down, you know, the faces down first, and then on the penguin, of course, you want to put the nose on top of the face, and then the head on the back, and then you want to put the hat, and then the cuff, and then you want to put the nose on the snowman. And you can kind of arrange this the way you think it looks best. So that's that. And then once we have our snow made, you know, these and the top, you can free motion inside here. I took mine into IQ Designer and just did a little circle and created something in there. So that was, you know, very simple. And I just plopped this on a sticky stabilizer and just kept moving it. And one thing I forgot to mention is that we're going to back this whole background piece and this piece with fusion fleece. So that's going to stabilize it so that when we go to, you know, do this embroidery and any of the quilting on the pillow and the applique, it's going to stabilize it a little bit. So we've got that going for us. And then we're going to have several different stitches that we're going to show you and on the applique pieces. And when we go into our sewing, a lot of these are in the decorative stitch selections. So we do have a quilting section here also in the utility stitches, and the blanket stitch Q14 is a great one to use for, you know, something that you're going to go over, and when you have a dip in it or a corner or a point, you stop here and then you're going to go on, and we can show you that. And we're going to show you on this piece different stitches that we've used that we thought really looked nice. So one other thing I wanted to mention, I am using a Sharp 80 needle, and that seems to work really well for appliquing. And it's going to also, you want to keep in mind that you want to watch what foot you're going to be using when you change into different stitch modes. So I'm going to get things together, get my threads together, and then we're going to start stitching. I do have the bobbin thread, embroidery bobbin thread in my bobbin, because on the back of this pillow nobody's going to be able to see anything. So I found that worked really good for this project. So I'll get my stuff together and we'll come back and get some stitches going. Now what I have done, I just want to give you another pointer. What I did is I did audition some stitches, and I saw this snow and a little snowball in between. I thought that might be something cute, put around this border here. So it's a good idea when you choose a stitch that you audition them on scrap, and then you can write down what stitch you want. You kind of pre-plan what you're going to do with each applique piece, and you can do them all the same. I did the bench pillow with all blanket stitch, so it's totally your project. You can do whatever you feel looks best. So what I'm going to start with, I'm going to go around the nose, and I'm going to use what we call a hem stitch. And there's so many decorative and character stitches in the machines now that it's unlimited. You want to make sure that if you've got a small piece, though, you want to kind of keep something fairly narrow, and that's going to be a success for you. So on the nose, I went through and I was checking the stitches I want to use, and I'm going to go to the hem stitch. So that's in the decorative and character, and it's in, was that 12? No, it's back over here at the utility stitches. It's under 3. I'm sorry. And the hem stitch is 3-17. So here's our hem stitch. So what I did here is I test drove this a little bit and found that the forward width was just a little bit too wide. So I brought that down to 3 millimeters. So here's my adjustment here, but I found that the stitch length at 2.5 was really good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at one end, and it tells me I've got my end foot. I do have my end foot on. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to center this little piece here with the edge of my applique, because that center stitch is what's going to be right along the edge of my applique piece. And let's see. Over my foot. And a lot of times when you're doing decorative stitches, keep in mind that you can control your speed here. You might want to keep it at a medium, depending on, just in case it starts getting away from you. And you just want to control going around the edge, go nice and slow. Now I'm just coming around to the end here, taking my time. Once you get on a straightaway, it does go a little bit faster. You want to make sure you take your time around those edges though. And then, so that stitch turned out pretty cute. That's the little hem stitch, 3-17. And like I said, right here, we're going to put that border, the snow border there that I auditioned earlier, so I don't have to stitch down here on the applique piece. Okay, next we're going to go on to the face. Now I'm going to do what we call a raw edge applique. So I'm going to go back to my utility, cancel this, and I'm going to change over to my J-foot. And basically what raw edge applique is you stitch just around the edge inside. And then this one actually has been washed. So it kind of gives a rustic feel to it. Little unique stitch there. And that's going to make this face, I thought, fluff up a little bit. So that might be a great stitch for any area that maybe it's a furry face or something in that regard. So I'm changing over to my J-foot. And for this, I'm going to use a smaller stitch. And I've got to change my thread. So I'm going to change my thread to a gray. Let's see, you're going to open. And just as a little note here, I did kind of put my threads in order, just like you would with embroidery, on the different areas I'm going to use in my applique. Okay, so I got my gray, and I'm going to start, let me trim this piece up. I'm going to start down here in the corner again, and just stitch 1/8 of an inch from the edge. And my J-foot actually has that little mark, and I'm using a center needle position. And I'm just going to do a little bit of a lock stitch here at the beginning. And I'm stitching just around the curve with an 1/8 seam. And this is, the straight stitch is so easy. This raw edge applique really is a unique applique stitch, and it goes so fast. Okay, now I've stopped my needle in the down position right at that point of the penguin's nose. So I am going to rotate this and continue stitching 1/8 an inch. And use my trim. So now you see we have this, and you can kind of rough this up if you want that edge. You can use a wire brush or something to rough that up if that's what you want right there. You don't, until you wash the placemat, it's really not going to do anything unless you rough it up. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use our black thread and do a satin stitch around his face. So, white thread and I have black thread. And satin stitch is what a lot of people will use for around the applique piece. It is time consuming, however, it does make a nice presentation. So, and the nice thing about using that bobbin thread is I don't have to change the bobbin thread with every color change. So I'm going to start here, and we talked about layering. So this cuff is going to go over the face. So we're going to do the background first, and then when we come over with the cuff to stitch the cuff of the hat, then it's going to cover where I start here. Okay, now we're going to set up our zigzag stitch for the satin. So what we need to do is we need to pull these closer together. So we're going to go down in the length until we are to the point where it's going to hold that edge pretty well. Let's do 0.04. And now 3.5 might be a little wide, so I'm going to go down 1. So that's going to make a nice satin stitch. So I'm going to thread my needle. Okay, and then I'm going to start right at the corner of that cuff of the hat. And okay, lower my foot, and use my foot control, and I'm just going to do a satin stitch all the way around his face. And this satin stitch, it's easy to use, but it does, because the density of the stitch, it does take a little bit longer. Okay, so now we've got that satin stitch around the face, this side of his face, and then we'll continue on this side of his face. Oh, my needle came unthreaded. Now let's try this again. Okay, so both sides of the satin stitch is completed on the face for the applique. Now, since we're layering, we're going to go to the brown now. And the last thing we're going to do is the cuff of the hat, because that's on top. So I am going to change my thread color again to the brown. Okay, so I'm going to refer to my notes. So the hat is going to be a blanket stitch. So that's the blanket stitch I used on the pillow. So I'm going to put the blanket stitch on the hat, the top portion of this hat with the brown thread. So the blanket stitch is under your quilting stitches. So I've got the blanket stitch here, and the width is 3.5. I'm going to go down to like 3 on that, and I'm going to go down 1 on the stitch length to 2.2. So, and you can audition to see what you find works best for the piece that you're appliquing around. So what we're going to do, and this is the J foot, I still have my J foot on, and I'm going to start right at this corner again. So you're gonna do the straight edge along the hat, and it's gonna take a bite into the hat with that blanket stitch or ladder stitch, whatever you prefer to call it. But this one you'll just go just a little bit slower, but as you go around the edges, it's gonna be a little bit easier if you just watch where your needle is penetrating right around the hat. And because I'm using my foot control, I have both hands to help guide my fabric. And now we're at the edge. So now we got that blanket stitch stitched all the way around the hat. Now the next thing we're going to do is the cuff. So I'm going to refer to my notes. And the cuff is a rick-rack stitch. And this is really cute. This is something I didn't didn't expect to be as cute as it did. But that's the beauty of auditionings. And it's in the quilting stitches, number Q24. And I didn't adjust this at all. I'm just going to go around the cuff and show you how great this stitch turned out. I do have to change my thread, though, to the blue thread. So I'll do that right now. Okay, I'm starting at the corner here, and I am using my J foot still. And I'm just going around the edge with this hem stitch. Okay, and when you're going around the corners, you just want to take your time. And let it now look how cute that is. That hem stitch really turned out cute on that hat. It sure looks like it's intensified. It's a couple layers of thread. So it does make it appear to be like a little bit of a yarn, and it looked really appropriate for this. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do our snow along the border. But I did want to talk about the serpentine stitch. This was quilted with the serpentine stitch, and what you'll do is you'll either use your quilt bar or you'll mark with a friction pen or chalk the lines, and you'll just stitch, you know, the distance away, however you choose, using the serpentine stitch. And the serpentine stitch is Q18, and it really goes fast. If you want to quilt something really quick, mark your fabric or use your quilt bar and stitch, quilt your piece. So now let's go to the snow that we wanted to do, and you know, right around this border. So we're gonna remove our blue thread and put in our orange thread. Because that orange is going to pop over that black and stick out and show a good contrast with that nose on the penguin. Okay. Now back to the machine. Okay, now what I'd like to do is create this snow border. And these little balls here reminded me of snowballs. So that's 12-23. And if you see here, I've got a string of them, but I can go ahead and go edit this to be just a single snowball. Then I'm going to navigate over to my fonts, and I like the lower case, and I'm going to spell out snow. Now that I've got it complete, I can go back over here and turn it on to be multiple. So you got to watch, we want the snow going down, so I'm going to have to rotate my placemat so that it's going to show the snow that way. So I've got change to my end foot. So I'm going to take my J foot off. It'll always tell you on the screen what foot you need. Okay, and this end foot gives you pretty good visibility in the center here. So here we go. Nearing the end here, and this goes pretty quickly. Just stitch right off the edge of the placemat. It doesn't matter that the snow didn't repeat, but it did end up with probably in the seam allowance, so that's gonna turn out really cute. So now we got that border, and what Diane did here is took a piece of felt or flannel, looks like, and just free motion sewed some snowballs here, and you definitely can do that. Just take some scraps and practice, or you can, like I did, go into IQ Designer and just create a little circle scribbles, and then you can embroider that if that's what you prefer. Some people do not like the free motions sewing, so that's the option if you don't want to do that. So 2 different ways you can implement that. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get our buttons ready, and sew the buttons on for the penguin's eyes, and then again for his hat, and then we'll be able to finish this project. Okay, now the next step is to put the eyes on our penguin, and then we're going to put a button on for the hat. So I got a little button here, and I've got a friction pen, and I basically just laid it down in the position I wanted it, hold it, and then you take your friction pen and mark the eyes. Okay, so now I've got where I want my eyes, and for the button, I've got my buttonhole foot and a button foot sewing foot M on, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert my button. I don't know if you can see this, with the clear plastic between the 2 holes, and then I'm going to use a zigzag stitch on my machine. Okay, now I've got my button on the M foot, and the center clear piece is between the 2. And you can turn your hand wheel. We took our zigzag stitch down through a 0 length, which is basically a bar tack, so it's going to stay in one position. But I want to turn my hand wheel, and you just want to make sure that when the needle's down, it goes in the hole, and then you turn it one more time, and it's not hitting the button, so it's not going to break my needle. And this is at a 3.5 width. I left that at default, and that seems to work for most buttons. So I will hold the tail of this, and now that I've tested it, I basically just stitch. Use my cutter, and it slides right off. Okay. Okay, now I'm positioning my other eye. Okay. I marked my eyes. Gonna put my button in, and I've tested the distance already for the 3.5. I'm going to move it in position so you'll be able to see that little dot underneath there. Right there. I'm going to lower my foot. I'm going to use a tie off to begin, and then stitch it on. And use the tie off, and then cut it. And there we have our other eye sewn on. So the next thing we have to do is sew this little sparkly button at the top, and I'm just going to make it right here in the middle. That looks good. So I'm going to insert, and my M foot has got 2 red dots here, and that's what you want to line up your buttonholes with, and you want to center that with. Now you can either have a shank there or pull this back. For the hat, I'm going to pull it back a little bit. I think I might have to go a little bit lighter. Yes. Okay. So I had to bump that up to 4 millimeters. By turning my hand wheel, I found that it was just a little too tight. Tying it off. Stitch. And now the button's on the hat. We've got the eyes on and our hat button on. So the next thing, if you want to put the snowballs on, you can do that. Otherwise, you're going to cut a piece of black fabric or whatever you choose for the backing. You're going to sew right sides together. You might want to trim this up after you square this up. And you're going to put right sides together with your black. Stitch all the way around it, leave an opening. You're going to turn it, of course, and then top stitch over the edge to close it up. And then your placemat is done. Now, if you're doing the pillow, all the applique is going to be the same. However, you will be putting the snowman on the ends and follow the manufacturer's instructions. The penguin goes in the middle. And I did use a pom-pom maker, which I found was really fun, and made the pom-poms for the hats, for the snowman and the penguin. So that you put the background then, and you're going to sew your bottom and top pieces on, your side piece on, create your backing, and just follow the directions on the Whimsy pillow pattern, and it really turns out cute. So that'd be a good addition to your winter decorations in your living room or on your bed. So, and if you see anything you need here, any of the notions, anything we've showed you in the video, feel free to call or visit Larry or Annette at Phil's Sewing in Washington, Missouri. Until next time.